Yo, this is the Fight Block. UFC 139 is live this Saturday on pay-per-view. Main event, Mauricio Shogun Rua takes on the returning Dan Henderson. Um, this is coming a week after UFC on Fox debut. Just dropping my quick thoughts. A lot of people have giving the show some criticism. Overall, I mean, this is MMA. Expect the unexpected. Unfortunately, we didn't get a 5-round war like some had hoped. And we got a 30-second knockout from Junior Dos Santos, which was huge. And, I mean, the only bitter, sour taste I have after the event is just the lack of performance by Cain Velasquez. I mean, we knew it was only going to be one fight with a build-up, and, I mean, they hyped up Cain Velasquez way too much. And really, it's not what we're used to in MMA. We're used to letting the fighters speak for themselves inside the cage. And there's not a whole lot of, I mean, yes, we get the primetime shows, which give the background, but we don't really get a whole lot of, this is why this guy is good, this is why he's champion. And, I mean, they really built that up and really built the hype up behind Cain Velasquez. And unfortunately, he didn't perform. So, I mean, just that's the only bad taste I have in my mouth. And unfortunately, for Cain, he just did not perform on the big stage. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's better fights to come. This is a 7-year deal starting in 2012 with Fox. And, you know, they're definitely going to mix things up. It would have been nice to see the Guida-Ben Henderson fight on television, only because, I mean, that really demonstrated a lot of mixed martial arts. And whereas a lot of the new fans tuning into Fox to check out the fights really didn't get to see what the sport was all about. They just got to see a knockout, which was nice, and huge win for Junior Dos Santos. I mean, I picked Dos Santos, and I picked him to catch Cain, and I just think Dos Santos is a scary heavyweight, and, you know, he's probably going to get the winner of Alistar Overeem and Brock Lesnar, and I would really like to see Overeem Dos Santos matchup. That would be sick. But yeah, so overall, I mean, I'm not disappointed with how the event went. Ratings did really well, and better fights to come. So a lot of people are giving the intro music they just didn't like the NFL, quote-unquote NFL music coming in for UFC. Well, actually, I've seen that theme song used for baseball, and when I saw it for baseball, I thought the same thing. But I think Fox is trying to now use the theme song as the Fox Sports overall presentation. So, I mean, yeah, I would have liked to see something a little bit different, but, you know, that is Fox Sports theme song. And it started out with the NFL, and that's only why people think NFL when they hear the music. But anyways, that was the only thing else I want to throw out there about the show. So, moving on. UFC 139 live this Saturday. Like I said, a lot of good fights. Card starts off with Stephan Bonnar taking on Kyle Kingsbury. You know, Stephan Bonnar, he's been out a while. I believe he was he had an injury. Came off one of the biggest wins of his career by defeating Igor. Oh man, I can't pronounce his last name. He won his last fight by decision. Before that, TKO'd Krzysztof Sosinski. And Stephan Bonnar was on a 3-fight losing streak before he's won his last 2. And a lot of people thought he was close to retiring and really just getting the boot. But he's turned his career around a little bit. He's on a 2-fight win streak, and he takes on a surging Kyle Kingsbury, former Ultimate Fighter contestant. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. He's looked really impressive. He's a tall, lengthy fighter. And, you know, this is a tough fight to call. It's going to be a brawl. And, you know, Bonnar's been out for a while. He hasn't fought since December of last year, so almost a full year. But, you know, Bonnar always brings it. And he's one of those fighters that can score a lot of points. And I see this fight going to the judges. And I'm taking Stephan Bonnar to win by decision. I think towards the later rounds, Kingsbury might gas. He's dangerous in the beginning, but we know how great Stephan Bonnar's chin is and how much damage Bonnar can take. And I think if Bonnar weathers the storm, he can easily steal the second and third round, take this fight by decision. So my pick, Stephan Bonnar by unanimous decision. Going on to the next fight on the card. Pull it up here. Martin Kampmann taking on Rick Story. Awesome matchup. Martin Kampmann coming off 2 losses, one to Jake Shields. controversial, and then one to Diego Sanchez, controversial. Both went to the judges' decisions, and can be argued that Martin Kampmann got screwed in both of those fights. So, I mean, unfortunately, both those fights could have gone either way. Before then, Kampmann was looking good. Dangerous stand-up fighter, Muay Thai fighter. Got dangerous stand-up. And then he can hold his own on the ground. He's got solid submissions and just his grappling. He's just a very well-rounded fighter. And Rick Story, coming off that shocking loss to Charles Brenneman, and really was the clear-cut #1 contender for the welterweight title. Had he just beat Charlie Brenneman. Had he just beat Brenneman, he probably would have gotten a shot at the title. Unfortunately, Brenneman came in on short notice, stepped in for, I forget who, maybe Rumble Johnson, if I remember correctly. But anyways, Brenneman stepped in on short notice and just out-wrestled Rick Story, which was shocking. Story just really, I guess, had trained for a stand-up fight and ended up getting a wrestling match and just hadn't trained his wrestling. So, Rick Story looking to bounce back. This is going to be a tough fight. Story's going to look to take Kampmann to the ground, and Kampmann's going to look to want to keep this fight standing. Kampmann's takedown defense looked much improved. Stuffed pretty much all of Diego Sanchez's attempts except for one, and that was in the third round, and potentially won Diego Sanchez the fight, even though Kampmann stuffed every other takedown attempt. As you can tell, I sided with Kampmann on that decision. Rewatched the fight, and it is a toss-up, so I don't know. But anyways, tough fight to call. Both guys, tough to finish, and I think it's just going to come down to whether Story can get this fight to the ground. And, man, I went against Rick Story a lot, and I got a lot of these fights wrong. And I guess I'm just going to go with Rick Story to pull out a decision here. I think if he can use his wrestling, push Kampmann against the cage, close down the distance, and grind it, just, I don't know, use his grappling to win him the fight. That's what I'm going to say. So I think whether it just be couture style, hold him up against the cage, dirty box, or he gets this fight to the ground, I think Rick Story pulls off a decision, out-grapples, and out-wrestles Martin Kampmann for a decision victory. Going on to the next fight on the card, we got Uriah Faber taking on Brian Bowles, and potentially my most anticipated fight on this card, although there's a lot of good ones, like I said, but Uriah Faber, Brian Bowles, great matchup. Uriah Faber coming off that title loss to Dominic Cruz. That was a brawl. And Brian Bowles, other than losing to Dominic Cruz, broke his hand, had to it was a doctor stoppage, broke his hand, actually lost his title to Dominic Cruz in that fight. He's undefeated. He's 10-1, and he's got the knockout power. He's got submissions. Overall, just very well-rounded. Coming off a huge decision victory over Takeya Mizugaki, who's definitely a top contender in the division. This is a tough fight to call. I calling a lot of freaking decisions, but I see a lot of these guys are tough to finish, and if this fight does end, I see Brian Bowles catching Faber. But really, when I look at this matchup, I think Faber's speed is a huge advantage. If he can get in and out and use his speed, I think he can outstrike Brian Bowles. Really, it's a pick'em, and I'm going to go with Faber in this one. I think Faber grinds out a decision. I wish I could think of better ways for these fights to finish, but all three fights I'm taking first three to end by decision. It's just how I see it going, unless someone just gets caught. Co-main event, Wanderlei Silva taking on Cung Le. Wanderlei Silva coming off that early, quick knockout loss to Chris Lieben. Before then, he had been out with an injury and long layoff, came back, got knocked out. Really, this is potentially Wanderlei Silva's last fight in the UFC. should he lose. Really, his chin looks like it's shot, and guy's been in a lot of wars. He's one of my favorite fighters, but should he lose, this could be a Chuck Liddell scenario where Dana White just says, you're done. So, takes on Kung Lee, who's, he was a superstar in Strikeforce, although he didn't fight all that much. And he hasn't actually fought since June of 2010, so it's been over a year. And if you haven't seen Kung Lee fight, very entertaining. Throws a lot of wild strikes. He's a fan of the spinning heel kicks or whatever, crazy spinning kicks. And just a very entertaining fighter. He's 7-1 in his career, but he really hasn't fought all that great of talent. I know Dana White's a fan of his. He's been wanting to get Kung Lee in the UFC for a while. I'm looking forward to seeing what Kung Lee can bring and hope he can get on a little bit of a consistent fighting schedule. I'd like to see him fight more, but he's got to get through Wanderlei Silva. This is going to be a brawl. Both guys are coming to strike. They're going to be swinging. And I just think Kung Lee's going to be the quicker of the fighter. He's going to land more. And I think this will be a lot like Chuck Liddell, Wanderlei Silva. I don't think Wanderlei is going to get caught. I think he's going to be able to bring a fight. And am I going to the judges again? No, I'm not. I'm picking Kung Lee to catch Wanderlei in the third round. I think, I think it's going to be a brawl. And I think Wanderlei will tire towards the end, and Kung Lee will be able to catch Silva and possibly send Silva into retirement, unfortunately. As much as us fans love to see Wanderlei Silva fight, it's coming to his legendary career is coming to a close, I think. So, but this is going to be an awesome matchup. Main event, Mauricio Shogun Rua taking on the returning Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson currently, had to vacate the title, I believe, light heavyweight champion of Strikeforce. Yeah, light heavyweight champion of Strikeforce. Vacates the title, comes over to UFC, and really, aside from his loss to Jake Shields, Dan Henderson has been on a roll. And I know he's up there. He's, I believe, 40-something now, 40, 41, and really not showing any signs of aging. Very much like Couture, and just is defying the odds. And, a win over Shogun Rua puts Dan Henderson right there in contention for a shot at the light heavyweight champion. Whether it be John Bones Jones, Rashad Evans, or whoever is getting the shot. I forget who. I know Rashad Evans had to pull out, but I'm pulling a blank who John Jones is supposed to be fighting. But anyways, Dan Henderson's right up there. And Shogun coming off a huge bounce-back win over... who did Shogun just beat? Too many fights. I can't remember all the finishes. Shogun coming off a huge win over Forrest Griffin. That's right. Knocked out Griffin in the first round. Forrest Griffin had been on a roll, so that was a huge win. It was... Shogun avenged that loss, and now takes on Dan Henderson, and what should have been, or how should I say this? It's a dream matchup in the making, and it should have, and surprisingly, never happened in Pride, and now we get it. So, several years down the line, but the matchup is finally happening. I don't know if this is going to be a 5-round fight. I think they said every main event after Lieb and Munoz, but really I haven't heard anything about whether or not this fight's going to be 5 rounds or if it's just 3 rounds. But anyways, overall, I'm going to have to side with saying that I haven't been all that impressed with Shogun in the UFC. Even when he wins, his win over Machida, his win over Forrest Griffin, I just haven't been all that impressed. The only fight he looked really, really good in was his loss to Machida. I thought that was prime-looking Shogun in that fight. And all his other fights, I just haven't been all that impressed, He is a dangerous fighter. He's tough to finish. Aside from John Jones, he's never been TKO'd, and he's got wicked leg locks, dangerous on the ground. Man, but Dan Henderson's been on a roll. I think his wrestling could be the difference. He can control this fight, and if it stays standing, he definitely has the power to catch Shogun. And I think Henderson has more tools to utilize to, whether it be his wrestling, his striking, to really just control this fight and take it where he wants it. And I think Dan Henderson catches Shogun and finishes this fight by TKO in the third round. Should be a good fight, but I got to go with Hendo. Hendo and his H-bomb. And, but yeah, so UFC 139, live on pay-per-view on Saturday. Those are my predictions. Someone's knocking on my door, so I'm going to cut it close it out real quick. Follow on Twitter, subscribe, check out the blog. Peace.